I'm Olivia Clarke, editor of Chicago Lawyer Magazine and the Chicago Daily Law Bulletin, and we're here with the Inside Out columnists Tina Martini and David Susler, and we're talking about the topic of diversity. So why is it important to have diverse people on a client matter?
Well, it's important because the real world is diverse. So clients and their businesses and the workforce continuously evolve accordingly. Today's legal issues often impact businesses and individuals of different backgrounds, ethnicities, geographies, and age groups. And so from a problem-solving perspective, when you're dealing with a diverse group of folks who are impacted by decisions, it's good to have collaboration among a diverse group as well. It's really important in terms of identifying and framing and addressing the issues that exist, as well as determining what the overall impact is likely to be of those decisions. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses and blind spots. And by having a diverse group of people addressing issues, what you hope for and usually achieve is a maximization of what those strengths are and minimizing what the weaknesses and the blind spots are. And this helps to actually leverage the best of the process, the best business and decision making that can happen during the process. And bottom line, if these decisions aren't enough, clients are demanding diverse teams more and more frequently. And to the extent that firms are not responding appropriately, they're being taken to task and are actually losing business opportunities as a result. So depending on who your clients and target clients are, you could definitely be seeing a direct impact in your pocketbook with respect to whether or not you're actually listening to what your clients are saying and presenting them with a diverse team.
Yeah, it's kind of a variant of the old adage that two heads are better than one. You know, the team approach is generally easier, faster, and better than one person trying to do it on their own. But when you have a diverse team with different approaches, different backgrounds, different ideas, the result is typically enhanced creativity, better and more productive communication, faster problem solving, and enhanced client service. Without diversity, especially in today's world, I think you really run the risk of making potentially catastrophic decisions by failing to include diverse viewpoints on the team. You know, if you remember the old Chevy Nova story that people in Spanish-speaking countries wouldn't buy that car because Nova means no-go in Spanish, that's actually an urban legend. However, it's still a very useful lesson in establishing both the importance and value of diversity, which I think means if you want to successfully approach a particular audience, then include someone from that audience in the team that's planning your approach.
So what's the next step in diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
Well, I think the next step is focusing on what makes us similar and brings us together as individuals and professionals rather than what divides us. And it may sound a bit trite, but I think it really is an essential next step towards creating an inclusive environment. I think sometimes it's so simple that people actually overlook how important it is. I think that all of us, both as individuals as well as collectively, can go a long and far way in terms of if we, in our communications with people, see it as a goal, regardless of whether the interaction is big or small, making sure that with every interaction we have with someone, that we really try to develop a rapport with them and really try to see the world from their perspective. I think that really is a very valuable and powerful way. It's a very simple behavioral and attitudinal approach, but I think it's a very powerful way to really migrate and take us to the next level in terms of creating an inclusive environment. Gandhi so wisely said, "Be the change that you seek." And I believe that with approaches like that, we could see a day where we no longer need to focus on diversity and inclusion because it already is as a state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I agree. The next step is really the focus on inclusion. I think most people today have the basic concept of diversity down, but for it to have a real and lasting impact, we really have to focus on inclusion. And to paraphrase my friend Jason Brown, who's the executive director and general counsel of NAMWolf, you can invite lots of diverse people to the party, but if you want them to stay, you have to give them meaningful and substantive roles. In the legal context, whether you're talking about a law firm or a company, this requires more than just bringing diverse people to a meeting. It requires that diverse attorneys have a substantive stake in the matters and in the business. To ensure this becomes a reality, for example, in-house attorneys can designate that a certain percentage of their outside legal work must go to women and minority-owned law firms. With larger firms, they can require that women and minority partners be the relationship partner and that the associates be given substantive roles in the matters they're working on. I also think we need to begin expanding our focus and understanding on who is diverse, because it's a lot broader than just race and ethnicity. Diversity includes things such as age, physical ability, and geographic origin, and not just country of origin, but that could be like somebody from a big city versus somebody from a small rural farming community.
So why is the topic of diversity interesting to you, to each of you? What interests you about that topic?
Well, in some ways, it's a tough question for me to answer because it's almost akin to asking somebody why they are of a particular religion or why they're drawn to certain people or activities, for example. On a very basic level, diversity is really who I am as an individual, and it's also, it's really the essence of who I am as a person, as well as when I take a look at who I am in the context of my family and professionally and just in society. It really is the essence of who I am, and I really attribute that to my mother's influence. My mother, and I know I've talked about her before in this column, my mom was born and raised in Mexico City and grew up during the 1930s and 1940s. And her dream was to be a doctor. And she was very well educated in Mexico and actually a bit of a child prodigy and had all the ability to be a doctor. But unfortunately, she wasn't really able to make it work in Mexico. And she saw the US as a land of opportunity. And so in the 1950s, she decided to move to the States, and she ended up living in Chicago. And what was really unfortunate was that she soon encountered discrimination here, both in terms of being a woman as well as being Mexican. And unfortunately, she was unable to fulfill her dream to be a doctor before she died. And I guess as her daughter, I was taught at a very young age that it's very important and almost my obligation to live up to my life's potential, whatever that may be, and to work very hard, to be grateful as well as generous, and to help make a difference for other people and to help them along the way, because you never really know how much of a difference you can make. It can be a very short conversation with someone and you can completely change the course of their life. And I guess diversity to me fits squarely within this entire construct of how I was raised and what I believe in. And I guess the way I see it, how can you not help people, especially when it's so fundamental to who we are as human beings?
Yeah, and I think similarly to me, it's probably as a result of the family I grew up in. I was raised to believe that all people are equal and should be afforded equal rights and opportunities, and my family worked hard to make sure that that became a reality. For example, my grandfather was the first merchant in my hometown to hire a black man to sell retail to customers, despite the fact that all the other white merchants in town said you can't do that. My father established the first full-time, fully funded legal aid office in my hometown to provide legal representation to the black community because it wasn't available to them before that. My mother was a school teacher. She was also a Brownie and Girl Scout troop co-leader with a black woman. I grew up in a diverse world. This was just the way it was. But as I grew up, I realized, well, this isn't the reality in the larger world. and the larger world is not going to become truly diverse and inclusive on its own. So I feel that I really have to do my part to make that a reality.
Okay. Well, thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.